iPadOS 15 is a huge quality of life improvement. There are features in this release that just make working from an iPad more streamlined. And this video is all about everything that's in iPadOS 15. My thanks to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this video. With iPadOS 15, the iPad is getting the customizable home screen we've all wanted. It's borrowing from the update the iPhone got last year, but at the same time doing stuff only the iPad's larger canvas can handle. Widgets are the first area where you'll see improvements. They can be placed anywhere on the home screen now. The side effect of this is that the iPad's home screen is much more spaced out again. I'm disappointed to see this after last year Apple made a big deal of using space appropriately in iPadOS 14. But if I had to pick between the two, I would pick the iPadOS 15 implementation of the home screen. With widgets being able to be placed anywhere and on more than just the first page, we can see more information on any given screen. This is a big part of my current home screen setup. There is now a new extra large widget exclusive to the iPad. This is great for apps that have a lot of information to share. During the beta, I found the TV's app extra large widget to be really useful. I use my iPad as a bedside TV, so when I wanted to resume a show, I would just tap on it and it would play the next episode. There is also an extra large version of the Files widget as well. With that comes some nice changes. You can change the displayed directory to any of your favorited folders in Files, so it's not just stuck on the recent folder. You can tap on any folder or file to quickly launch it. This is great if an app stores its content in the Files app. You can use this to quickly launch into a specific file or project. I use this to jump into the user media folder for LumaFusion all the time. I've been wanting a way to add folders and files to the home screen to quickly open them. With this widget, I can do exactly that. The Contacts app got an extra large widget. This isn't one that I expected to use, but it's pretty cool how it works. At first, it displays recommended contacts, but you can go into the widget settings to set specific people. The widget will show if any of these contacts have Do Not Disturb on, which this is just a nice indicator to know if I sent them something, they probably won't see it anytime soon. When you tap on a contact, you're presented with a custom page. It gives you access to obvious things like messages and FaceTime, but also items like shared calendar appointments, notes, and files. The new extra large widget is a great choice if you have a lot going on. It will show your calendar appointments for the current day plus the next 3. I don't have enough calendar appointments in my life to need something this big, but I used to have a job where I lived out of my calendar, and this would have been amazing for that. Widget stacks got some changes. You could now pull widgets out of a stack before you had to delete it, then recreate it in some other place. Now when you create a stack, there is an option called Widget Suggestions. This will automatically add widgets from apps to this stack. Personally, I turn this off everywhere. I found it never got what each stack was for, and then when Smart Rotate would kick in, I was usually seeing something I didn't want to see. This video is sponsored by Surfshark VPN. As some of you may know, I am a former network admin, and I know the importance of a good VPN. And when I say a good VPN, Surfshark meets that requirement for me. They don't keep any logs, so you're not just trading one big brother for another big brother. And when you're connecting to an unsecured network like a coffee shop, you need a VPN to keep people from snooping on your internet traffic. This was the kind of thing I used to simulate at my old job, and it's incredibly easy to do. Surfshark's Clean Web feature blocks ads, trackers, malware, and phishing attempts. This gives you a clean browsing experience. Using a VPN and connecting to other countries will allow you to view different content in different streaming services. Not all the content in one country is the same as other countries. Surfshark is an excellent VPN. You can install it on as many devices as you want. There is no device cap. Be sure to check out my link here. I will also put it in the description below, so it's really easy for you to just click on. And use promo code LOLLY at checkout, and this will get you 83% off and an extra 3 months for free. And if you're still uncertain, Surfshark has a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's really nothing to lose. My thanks to Surfshark for sponsoring this video. The next update for the home screen is the app library. This is another thing that was introduced in iOS 14 for the iPhone and came to the iPad this year. I figured this would happen, but I was hoping it would come with some updates. There are 3 ways you can access the app library: swiping all the way to the right side, using the icon in the dock, or using the keyboard shortcut Globe Shift A. I found myself using all 3 of these, just depending on where I am in the OS or if I have a keyboard attached to my iPad. What's great about the app library is the fact that all of your apps can live here now, meaning you don't have to hide apps that are just share extensions in some random folder. Also, keep in mind, tapping on a widget launches the app, so if you want your home screen to just be widgets, go for it. And the small widget on the iPad takes up the same amount of space as an app icon because everything is spaced out again. I still find having app icons in the dock and on the home screen important. App Library is still stuck like the iPhone. There's no way to customize it, so if you disagree with where an app gets filed in a folder, there's nothing a user can do about it. Whatever the app developer picks for the category is where that app has to live. Like the Twitch app being added to creativity and not entertainment. That doesn't really make any sense to me. You can now add 17 icons to the dock on the 12.9-inch iPad Pro and 14 icons for the smaller iPads. These can be apps, bookmarks for web pages, or shortcuts. This doesn't count the 3 recent apps in the dock either. Another iOS feature to make its way to the iPad is the ability to turn off home screens. Go into the jiggle mode and tap the dots at the bottom. Here you can turn off specific pages and also rearrange them by dragging and dropping. On the lock screen, you can now access Spotlight. You can search for what you want. When you select it, the iPad will authenticate either using Face ID or Touch ID, and will then open up to show you your results. This is handy if you want to sit down and jump right into whatever you need. Focus is a new feature, not just in iPadOS, but across the whole Apple ecosystem. This has been one of my favorite features during the beta. The core of Focus is profiles. Some of these will be familiar, like driving and sleep, but now you can build your own custom modes and use a few pre-built ones. With these profiles, you can control what contacts and apps can send you notifications, which home screen is active, and a lot more. You can trigger these modes right from Control Center. Just long press on the Do Not Disturb icon and select one. Custom focus modes have been my playground for the summer. I've built ones for general work, filming in my office, writing, and more. These all do different actions when triggered. To create a focus mode, go into Settings, Focus. Hit the plus button in the top right corner. Here you can select some preset focus modes, but what we want is custom. Some of the built-in ones have limitations and don't have access to all the features. I found this to be more of an issue on my iPhone than my iPad. This is why I've been primarily using the custom modes. Enter a name, pick a color, and select an icon for the mode. I'm kind of disappointed with how limited the icon selection is, especially considering Apple has SF symbols. The next page is for people. Here you can choose who is allowed through Do Not Disturb when this mode is on. If you don't want anyone to be able to send a notification, hit None. Messages will still come through even when this mode is on, but they'll be saved in a new notification summary in Notification Center. The next page is for app notifications. You can enable just the important apps for whatever mode you're making. For me, in my work modes, I allowed notifications from productivity apps, but not messaging apps. I like that Apple separated these two out, so this way I can disable all contacts from sending me any kinds of notifications, but then I could enable phone and FaceTime. If somebody's calling me, it's probably important, but I won't see any message notifications. In the middle of this page is an option for time-sensitive notifications. If you get something and the OS thinks you need to act on it right away, even if the app isn't in the allowed list, it'll still send that push notification through. After going through the initial focus setup, you'll get the settings page. Here you can tweak the notification settings for apps and people. You can enable sharing of your focus status. In apps like Messages and other third-party apps that update to support this feature, they will be able to show your contacts you have Do Not Disturb on. I really like this. Over the beta period, I saw when people I was talking to had focus on. This way I knew they wouldn't see my message right away. If I absolutely needed an answer right away, I could force it through, but that only happens once or twice. don't be the person that abuses that. Under focus status is home screen settings. This is where I had some fun configuring my home screens. Like I mentioned, you can now hide home screens on the iPad. While using focus, you can have certain home screens appear and others disappear when using a mode. For example, my work focus triggers a work home screen with apps and widgets specific to my work. My personal one triggers a home screen with apps and widgets for entertainment and messaging. When one of those is active, the opposite home screen is turned off. There is a ton of power and customization to be had with this feature. Another feature in the home screen page is hiding notification badges. Badges are super distracting. They're literally big red buttons hovering over an icon. They aren't subtle. I turn this on for a lot of my specific work modes, like deep writing, so I'm focused on just the task at hand. In the lock screen settings, you have a couple of options. One is dimming the lock screen. This makes the background almost black. Kind of great if you want a visual reminder not to mess with your device. I use this on my iPhone for my sleep and deep writing modes. These are two areas where I don't want to be messing with my devices when they are active. The second option is for silenced notifications and whether to show them on the lock screen. If I have dim lock screen on, I'll have this disabled. This hides any incoming notifications in Notification Center. You can still get them to show up by turning off that focus or swiping up in Notification Center. The last option is for scheduling and automating when a focus can be enabled or disabled. The automation triggers are time, location, and when a specific app is opened. Personally, I've been manually triggering focus modes. Since I work at home and don't have a set schedule, these aren't super useful to me. But if you have an office you go to or a specific place or time you like to work, these could be huge for you. There is also a smart activation feature. This uses machine learning and tries to figure out automatically which mode the device should be in and when. These didn't work for me, but I think that has more to do with me working from home and not having a schedule. Focus has been one of my favorite features to use during the beta. In a given second, I can switch from a personal and entertainment mode to a work mode, then into a really granular mode. This allows my devices to pull the equivalent of a software transformer and is set up and configured for the task at hand. I broke my focus modes down to two ideas. The first is general use cases of my iPad. These are work and personal. When I enable these, they switch to the appropriate home screen and do not disturb profiles. They can also trigger a shortcut. In shortcuts for iOS and iPadOS 15, there is now a new automation trigger for focus. When you enable a focus, you can have a background automation run. Enabling the work focus will run my time tracking shortcut, and enabling the personal focus will stop all time tracking. This is super nice because I forget to stop time tracking all the time. Then the second side of focus is specific tasks. This is stuff like writing, filming, editing videos or photos, or podcast recording. These trigger more granular actions when enabled. Stuff like lock out certain app notifications, no notifications from people, dim the lock screen, or run a specific shortcut. I think focus modes will be this year's top feature for those people that work from an iPad. I talked about how when running a focus, it can trigger a shortcut, but you can also turn on a focus by running a shortcut. So if you have a setup shortcut for your day, you can add the action set focus to it. Building shortcuts with the set focus action gets you access to a whole host of more features than what's just in the focus settings. One key feature to focus and the whole new do not disturb system is that it syncs with all of your devices. So if I enable my work mode on my iPad, it'll also be enabled on my phone and watch. I really like this because I always forget to put at least one device in do not disturb. But if you don't want this, you could turn it off in the main page of the focus settings at the bottom. Combining both shortcuts automation and the syncing and focus can give you interesting results. Because shortcuts automation is local to each device, you can have different devices do different things when a focus is enabled. For example, when I enable deep writing shortcut on my iPad, this starts time tracking and plays background noise via the app Dark Noise. On my iPhone, this switches to a blank home screen. I briefly mentioned how notifications will go into a summary while a focus is active. You can now set up apps to always go to that summary even if you don't use a focus mode. This is great for apps that send stuff you don't need to see right away. I have deliveries, music, TV forecast, overcast, and a few others go here. Then twice a day, I get a roundup of everything happening in those apps. This way, I'm not being bombarded with notifications all day long. You can configure when you see these in Settings, Notifications, Scheduled Summary. Multitasking on the iPad has always been a source of contention. Some people have found it too hard to remember the steps for activating it. With iPadOS 15, multitasking is getting smoothed out. But before we dive into what's new, I want to point out that the old system is still there. You can still drag and drop app icons or content to activate split view or slide over. Apple has done a good job at merging the old way with the new way to make them feel seamless and work together. In every app now, you'll see this 3-dot button at the top. This is the new multitasking menu. Tap on this and you'll see all the multitasking options available for that window. The center control is for split view. Tap on this and the active window will slide to the right side and reveal the home screen. You can then select an app from the home screen dock, app library, or even Spotlight to put in split view. I really like this new system. Before, only apps that were in the dock were easy to put in split view. You'd see a lot of iPad users like me load up the dock with folders so we could easily put any app into multitasking. Now it doesn't matter where the app icon lives, it can be easily added into a multitasking pair. Once you have split view set up, you'll see one of the multitasking menu buttons highlighted at the top. This means that is the active window. So if you start typing or trigger something like a keyboard shortcut, it will be against that window. The first button in the multitasking menu is for full screen. If an app is in split view, slide over, or the new center window, which we will talk about in a bit, hitting that button will make the window go full screen. The third button in this menu is for slide over. Slide over is such a handy feature, but until now wasn't really discoverable unless you already knew it existed. When you tap this button, it will move that window into slide over. Now, if you only have one window open, it will slide that window out of place and you'll have to pick an app to go behind it. This is because slide over can't exist on the home screen. I think this is a big oversight. A lot of apps work better in slide over, like calculators, 2FA, Twitter clients, and a lot more. In fact, I would go so far as to say there should be a way to pin apps to always open in slide over first. Then you could make them full screen if you want. Like I mentioned, there is a new multitasking type called center window. The best example of this is in Mail. When composing a message, the compose window will start in the center window position. Now, this looks pretty much the same as the Mail compose window in iPadOS 14, but now it's considered to be a part of the multitasking stack. You can move the center window into the other three positions, full screen, split view, or slide over. Also, third parties will be able to take advantage of this center window as well. Another new aspect of multitasking is the shelf. The shelf is designed to help jump around the multiple instances of the apps easier. When you open an app that has other active instances, you'll see thumbnails of these at the bottom. This will also show any other apps you have in split view with the app you just opened. You can tap on these previews to jump to them. You can also grab one and put it in split view with another. If you only have one instance of an app or want to get to the shelf, just tap the app icon again. This will bring up the shelf and give you an option to create a new window of that app. The shelf will appear after you put an app in split view if it has multiple active instances. This is nice because you can jump to the window you want. But if the first window was already in a split view pair with another app, it'll break that pair to make the new multitasking pair. When creating split view, the OS pulls the most recently active instance of the app and adds it to the pair. Doesn't matter if it was already in split view, slide over, or had something you wanted to stay in full screen. For me, I like to have workspaces set up in split view pairs. I do this a lot with scripts and notes and drafts. With the current implementation, these workspaces get broken up a lot. The app switcher got a few nice upgrades. Now on the right side, you'll see all the slide over apps. This helps unify everything, though slide over still has its own app switcher for quickly jumping between apps when you have slide over active. In the main app switcher, you can now drag and drop apps into split view. You can also pull apps out of split view from here as well. This is a nice way of building app workspaces with very specific content. For apps that have multiple active instances already, you'll see a new icon by their name. If you tap on this, this will jump into an app switcher that shows all the instances of that app. It's basically a large shelf. One of the shortcuts actions I've wanted for a long time is the ability to create split view pairs and put apps into slide over. In iPadOS 15, these are here. First is the action split screen apps. When using this, you can set the apps that will go into split view. You can also pick the ratio in which they appear. This can be half and half or 2/3 and 1/3. I've been using this to launch apps that I use in pairs a lot, like Things and Fantastical. I usually like to work with these together, but sometimes I put them in slide over or split view with different apps. Like I mentioned earlier, doing this will break that pair, so running the shortcut quickly fixes that. The next action isn't new, but it has a new option. In Open App, there is a toggle for putting the app into slide over. I created a shortcut for always opening pCalc, a calculator app, into slide over. The hardware keyboard got some nice upgrades. In iPadOS 15, there is now full UI keyboard navigation. This means you can use the arrow and tab keys to move around the UI and use Enter to select items. And not just app UI either, but also the home screen. You can use these keys to interact with widgets, apps, bookmarks, and shortcuts. This is a big finally for me. This is the kind of thing that makes a computer feel like a computer. Third-party apps will have to update to support this, so you may not see this on every app right away. When holding down the command key in an app, you'll see a new, more organized keyboard shortcut menu. This closely resembles the Mac menu bar. You'll find familiar categories like File and Edit here. You can tap on these categories to jump to them. You can also tap on the command to execute them. After this menu appears, you can start typing to search for a specific command. This is great for apps with a lot of keyboard shortcuts. I really like this more organized keyboard shortcut menu. It makes me think that a permanent menu bar might make sense on the iPad, especially in apps with a lot of keyboard shortcuts. This would give access to these shortcuts when you're in tablet mode and don't have a keyboard attached. There is also a lot of new system-wide keyboard shortcuts. These take advantage of the globe key on keyboards like the Magic Keyboard and the Smart Folio keyboard. If you use a keyboard that doesn't have a globe key, you can go into Settings, Keyboard, Hardware Keyboard, Modifier Keys, and Set One. For my mechanical keyboard, I replaced the Caps Lock key to the globe key. I also set the Caps Lock key on my Magic Keyboard to be a globe key as well, so I don't break muscle memory. If you hold down the globe key, you'll see all the new system-wide keyboard shortcuts. This menu changes based on context. So it will look different if you're on the home screen, have an app open, or are using something like slide over. One of my favorites is Globe S. This triggers Siri. On my iPad, I use the accessibility feature Type to Siri. So when I trigger this, I get a pop-up window and can quickly type my command. This makes a lot of sense for the way I use my iPad. So when I'm working, I can trigger the shortcut and tell Siri what music to play, to start a timer, or just ask a question. Globe N will bring down Notification Center. Globe C will do the same thing but with Control Center. Globe A will reveal the dock when you have an app open. Globe Shift A will bring up the app library. There are a lot more of these shortcuts, and I encourage everyone to explore this keyboard shortcut list by holding down the globe key. When you have an app open, you can hold down the globe key and use the left and right arrow keys to navigate through the recently used apps. Hit globe down arrow to reveal the shelf of the open and active app. And hitting globe up arrow will bring up the app switcher. These are all great shortcuts for quickly navigating between apps and different instances of apps. But that's not all. There are now shortcuts for putting apps into multitasking and managing that. With a app open full screen, hit globe control left or right arrow. This will shift the active window to the corresponding side so you can pick an app to go into split view. Once you have apps in split view, you can hit globe control down arrow to replace the active app. This is where these keyboard shortcuts fall apart for me. Once you have apps in split view, you can no longer use the shortcut with the left and right arrow key. This now flip-flops the app positions, so it breaks muscle memory. Instead, you have to use globe shift down to replace an app, and it replaces the active window. And if you remember, the only way to tell which is the active window is the menu bar button at the top will be highlighted. I truly believe it should be the left and right arrow key shortcut to replace an app throughout the whole OS, no matter what is open. You shouldn't have to remember two different shortcuts that do the same thing but in different context. Globe backslash will reveal slide over. Globe option left and right arrow will move the slide over window to the left or right side. Globe command backslash will move back through the stack of slide over apps. Weirdly, there is no way to go forward, but the carousel of apps does wrap all the way around. Hit globe backslash again to hide slide over. If you already have apps in split view but want to move one to slide over, tap on it to make it the active app, then hit globe option left arrow. I'm super happy that we have shortcuts for enabling multitasking now. Some of these, like I mentioned, need to be flushed out a bit still. Others will take some time to memorize for people. The way I did it is I challenged myself to only use these to enable multitasking. I got them down in a couple of days. One complaint that I've heard from a lot of people in the past is that the keyboard bar gets in the way. In iPadOS 15, you can now drag it to the side and it'll collapse. Then just tap on it to reveal it. Alternatively, you can tap on the keyboard bar's menu button and select minimize. Over the beta period, Safari 15 has been the source of big contention and change. If you go back to the keynote or even my iPadOS 15 overview video and look at what's shipping, they are very distinct from each other. The biggest change to Safari is the new UI. In the beginning of iPadOS 15, the tab in the URL box was unified. While this might make for a nice looking minimalist design, using it was a nightmare. Now, this is a setting you can still enable in Settings, Safari, but the default is a much more usable version of this. The URL and tab bars are separated like the previous versions of Safari, but this is still not perfect. The shading of the active tab is very, very subtle, so if you have a lot of tabs open, it's hard to tell what the active tab is. The bookmark bar is now below the tabs. This breaks the illusion that each tab is its own page. I use this bar a lot, so I don't want to turn it off, but every time I see it, it still throws me off. Another UI change to Safari is the toolbar now adopts the color of the web page. I really dislike this and find it to be really distracting. Having the whole top bar change colors when switching tabs makes UI elements that aren't distinct hard to discern. Luckily, this is something you could turn off in Settings, Safari. One interesting tidbit that has been added to Safari is you can now pull to refresh a page. This is extremely handy in tablet mode and on the iPhone. One of my favorite features in the new Safari is the customizable start page. You might have noticed right off the bat you can set a background image. If you scroll all the way to the bottom and hit edit, you can choose a background image. In this same menu, you can edit how the start page is displayed. At the top, you can choose to sync your start page with your other devices. Under that, you can choose the content that is displayed. Part of this is the new Shared With You section. You'll see this throughout the whole OS. This is links and other content that has been sent to you from your contacts. This way you can see links when you are in the right context and can go back to them when need be. I really like this feature. The other items have been in Safari for a while, but they're now more organized onto a single page. Another one of my new favorite features in Safari is tab groups. In my iPadOS 15 overview video, I said I didn't get them and I miss pen tabs, but after having some time to use them, I really like these. These basically allow you to send tabs to different groups, creating a different window for Safari. While you could use another window of Safari on the iPad to create the same effect, tab groups sync to all of your other devices. I found this incredibly handy over the summer when I was looking into Obsidian. I have a bunch of videos, articles, and links to extensions. I saved all of these to a tab group so I can go over my research and have all of those tabs open. To move a tab to a group, just long press it and select Move to Tab Group. You can now move it to an existing tab group or create a new one. This keeps the tabs out of the main window in Safari, which for me can get really crowded really easily. I can't overstate enough how great tab groups have been for research and planning. As you have seen, you get access to tab groups through the newish sidebar, and I say newish because it's mixed with a lot of old stuff that hasn't changed. I was hoping to see an overhaul to Safari reading list this year, but it's still basically the same. In fact, every feature in the sidebar is basically the same. It's just been redesigned to match the modern Safari look and added support for tab groups and the Shared With You section. Extensions are new to Safari on the iPhone and iPad this year. This is something I'm really excited about, but will heavily rely on third-party developers adopting it. The few extensions I've tried have been really nice. They live in the URL bar at the top. Just one more reason why the unified tab and URL bar wouldn't have worked. You can tap on them to interact with them. There's also a puzzle piece icon in the same box. Tap on that to manage your extensions. Here, you can enable newly installed extensions. I'm really excited to see what developers have been working on for extensions. The few that I've been on the beta for have been really interesting. Files didn't get the major overhaul a lot of people wanted, but it did get a lot of nice quality of life features. The first isn't any new flashy feature, but Files itself feels a lot more stable than it did in iPadOS 14. I noticed this right away in Beta 1 and have been impressed with how reliable it has been for me. Arguably, this is the way it should have been from launch, but better late than never. The next feature is something I've been using a lot, and that is a progress bar for transferring files. Thanks to the way APFS works, you don't need this for transfers between folders locally on your iPad. But when you're moving files to an external drive or another computer, this is incredibly important. You can now see the progress of your file transfer. Files can now read NTFS drives. This is the same support the Mac has. It can read the drives but can't write to them. When in the icon view, you can now click and drag to select multiple files. Unfortunately, this does not work in column or list view. But my favorite new feature in Files isn't even in the Files app, it's in Shortcuts. Ever since Apple bought Workflow, the entire Shortcuts community has been wanting file system actions, and now they are here. There are a ton of new actions to use. With these new actions, I've been able to easily automate a lot of my workflow that I couldn't do before. The new actions are Get File from Folder, Get Contents of Folder, Move File, Open File, Rename File, Select File, Save File, File, which allows you to pick a specific file, then pass it to the next action, and Folder, which does the same thing as the previous action, but with a specific folder. I'm working on a more in-depth video dedicated to just shortcuts, and I'll be covering how I'm using those there. Notes got some of the coolest updates in iPadOS 15. One of my favorite features added in this release is Quick Note. This is a floating window that is resizable and movable, allowing you to quickly jot down a note anywhere in the OS and link content to it at the same time. There are a few different ways to trigger Quick Note. The first is to take your finger or Apple Pencil and swipe up from the bottom right corner. This is handy when you're in tablet mode and you're poking around or drawing something. The second is Control Center. I think this is the least convenient way, and I only used it to test it. The third, and my personal favorite, is hit Globe Q. This goes back to those system-wide keyboard shortcuts we spoke about. It's really nice to be anywhere in the OS and have a thought. I have a bunch of different ways to trigger Quick Note, then I can just jot down the note. Apple really understood when making this feature, people use iPads in a lot of different ways. You could also use the Apple Pencil with Quick Note to handwrite or draw out something. When you create a Quick Note, it's saved into a special folder in Notes. One of the cool things is you can move these notes out of that folder and it still maintains some of its special magic. We'll get to what that is in just a second. Like I mentioned, the Quick Note window can be resized and moved around the iPad. This works the same way Picture-in-Picture works. You can even grab the handle and swipe it to the side to dismiss it. When activating Quick Note, it shows your most recently created note. In Quick Note, you can swipe left and right to go in between previous notes. This is great for accessing those notes, but it can get out of hand if you have a lot. During the beta, I was merging a lot of quick notes with larger notes in different folders where it made sense. So if you move a note out of the quick notes folder, it will no longer be in the rotation of quick notes. When working in a quick note, you may see a button at the top that says Add Link. If you tap on this, it will create a link to the content you have on screen and add it to your current quick note. This can be URLs, articles from RSS readers, emails, and any other app that updates to support this. This is built using an existing API, so you may see some apps already supporting it. When you put a link into a quick note, you can tap on that link. It'll open back up to that content, and you'll see a thumbnail of that note appear in the bottom right corner. Tap on it, and it'll bring up the corresponding quick note. This is great for seeing all of your thoughts that you've written down for the content on screen. If you've moved a quick note with a link out of the quick notes folder, it will still show that thumbnail with the corresponding content on that page. Now, there's one other way to make a quick note. In Safari, highlight some text and tap on it. There will be a new option for Add to Quick Note. This will put a link to that page in the quick note and make the thumbnail the highlighted text. When you tap on these links in Notes, not only will it jump to that section, but it will also highlight that text for you. The highlight will only stay there as long as the quick note is open. Surprisingly, this feature is not available in the Books app. This seems like a logical feature to include in that app. For people that use Apple's Notes app, I think Quick Notes is going to be a game-changing feature. The ability to call up a window, write out your thought, and quickly link to something has been amazing over the beta period. But I would like to see Apple open this up to third-party Notes app. Let users decide which app should get access to Quick Note. Apple Notes has always used folders for organizations, but with the newest updates, it now supports tagging. Just use the pound symbol and type the tag anywhere in a note. The tag will then show up under the Notes folder in the sidebar. If you're already using folders for organizing, consider using tags as filters. If you put notes in a folder called Personal, you don't need to tag them with Personal. Use something more granular. For even more filtering, there is now custom smart folders in Notes. When creating these, you can assign tags to the smart folder. You could pick one tag, but I don't see that as useful since tags already live in the sidebar. Where these can get powerful is if you assign multiple tags to a note, then use a smart folder to filter to very specific notes. I've always preferred folders over tags, but combining the two makes for a powerful combination, especially if you have a lot of notes. Notes also got some collaboration updates. Now you can mention anyone that has access to that shared notes document. Just use the @ symbol and type their name. You can tap the autofill option at the bottom. This will send a push notification so they can see whatever you need them to see. There is also now a changelog in Notes. Tap on the More button and select See Activity. This brings up a side panel of all the changes to that document and who they were made by. You can also go into Manage Share Notes and turn on Highlight Changes. This will give each person in the shared document a unique color and highlight who added what. In the past, when drawing in Notes, the drawing section was always completely separate from everything else. It's still not as merged as I would like to see, basically handwriting over typed text, but you can now add images to the drawing area. Another productivity app to get some updates is Reminders. Reminders is turning into a really robust application for task management. The first new feature is tags. These work similarly to the tags in Notes. As you add a task, you can type pound and start typing a tag. It will also offer suggested tags based on pre-existing ones as you type. Also, like in Notes, there is now a new section under Projects for your tags. Another feature Notes and Reminders share is Smart List, but Reminders takes this to a whole nother level. To create a Smart List, select Add List, then pick Make into Smart List. Of course, you can create them based on a group of tags, but you can also filter them with attributes like date, time, location, flag, and priority. This reminds me a lot of OmniFocus's Perspectives feature. Tag tasks based on context and use other filters to create different perspectives. This is going to be a powerful feature for anyone that uses Reminders. Reminders also got improved natural language support for adding tasks, so you can type water plants every Thursday at 9 a.m. It will create a task called water plants, set the date to every Thursday, and remind you at 9 a.m. In the Photos app, you can tap on the information icon to see the EXIF data of a photo. This is great for seeing details of how a photo was captured. This will show information like the camera that was used, the lens, the ISO, shutter speed, and more. It will also display location and time information. If you want to add a note to a folder, you can add it to the caption section. In Shortcuts, there is a new Create Photo Album action. I made a simple shortcut that asks for a date range, then grabs all the photos from that range, then makes a new photo album out of them. This is great for trips and events. In Spotlight, you can now search for images based on the content in a given image. This works like Search does in the Photos app. Photos indexes your images locally on your device. Then you can trigger Spotlight and type something like dog or car. This also works with contacts you've set up in the People section of Photos. The big new feature for images, though, is live text. There's a few different levels to this. If you have an image with text on it, you can use live text. The device will OCR that image so you can copy and paste that text. This is extremely handy if somebody sends you a screenshot, but you need some text from it. This was my primary use case of live text during the beta. Also, when searching for a photo using Spotlight, you can search for text in a photo as well. Thanks to live text being built in, Shortcuts got some new OCR actions. The first action is extract text from image. Does what it says on the tin. It'll pull the text out of an image, then pass that to the next action. The second is get text from PDF. This basically does the same thing as the previous action, but specifically for PDFs. These two Shortcuts actions I think are going to be extremely important for Shortcuts users. There's also a couple of other new text and PDF actions in Shortcuts. Split PDF into pages allows you to get a specific page or pages from a PDF document. Then there is make spoken audio from text. This turns any text into an audio file. I've been mentioning throughout this whole video that Shortcuts got some new actions, but that's not the only thing it got. The editor was completely overhauled in Shortcuts. The first thing you'll notice is actions are more compact now. This allows you to see more of your shortcut, which is a huge deal for some smaller iPads and the iPhone. For nested actions like menus, if statements, lists, you can now collapse those sections. Long pressed on the action icon to get the collapse option. This makes working on large shortcuts so much easier. When you finish with a section, just collapse it. After collapsing it, there will be some text under that section saying how many actions are there. You can tap on that to reveal that part. Specific settings dedicated to the shortcut now live in the sidebar. There are a couple of new Mac-specific options, but there is also a new input type as well. Receive what's on screen will pass the current on-screen content through the shortcut. This is really exciting because up until now, we only had the share sheet to pass content to a shortcut. Receive what's on screen uses the same tech that Quick Note linking does. That being said, during the beta, I could only get it to work with web pages. Since I'm a big drafts user, I made a shortcut that recreates the Quick Note linking feature but for drafts. If there is valid content on screen, it'll use regex to get the link, then format it into Markdown. Then it asks me for my note and saves it to drafts. This one shortcut has become really important to the way I work. I run shortcuts using the input method from either my dock or Spotlight. This way I can quickly grab the content without much of an issue. There is also a get on-screen content action that does what this new input action does. This is good if you want this further down in the stack or an if or menu action. When making a shortcut, there is also a bunch of new glyphs for the icon. There are a few new scripting actions in Shortcuts as well. First is Share with Apps, which uses the share extensions from apps you have installed. It's a much more specific version of the share action. Second is Stop and Output. This is great for debugging a shortcut. You can put this action anywhere in a shortcut, and when it gets to that point, it stops running the shortcut and will pass whatever the current content of that shortcut is. Then finally, there is a Go to Home Screen action. I've mentioned a bunch of new actions in Shortcuts throughout this video, but I'm going to be starting back up my Shortcuts workflow series. I'll be diving in how I'm using these new actions, along with a bunch of others throughout the series, so be sure to subscribe. So that's iPadOS 15. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite feature is. And again, my thanks to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this video. Be sure to check out the link in the description below to claim 83% off and an extra 3 months free. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you haven't already, and have a great day.